everyone, it's Desiree, and yes, I am here with day 4 or video 4 for Spellbinders, and for this project we are going to be featuring their large die of the month club. This one is wonderful as always. This is called Mary's Stitching, and you can see these 3 images. Once you've die cut them, you can then stitch them, hence the Mary Stitching. Now keep in mind, we always like to stretch our products, so just because it says Mary Stitching doesn't mean that you have to have Christmas colors or anything else like that. You can use any colors that you want and make these for any occasion that you would like. So as always, you will be getting a card when it comes to your kit if you already subscribe or if you do subscribe, and it'll have the contents and then also give you some inspiration. And this inspiration will also show you how to stitch one of these images. But just know you can do it any way that you would like. So this here could be a snowflake, it could be a star, and I just chose certain areas to stitch on using my variegated threads. I like the look of the variegated threads because they automatically blend. So you get the difference in color. Now that's what the tree looks like, and I've set that aside for me to stitch at another time. So I have my standard A2 size card base ready to go, and I have already taken care of all of the die cutting for this border. Now this doesn't have to be a border piece. You can overlay it with 2 pieces and then stitch down the center of it. Again, it is your choice. Think outside that box. So I did grab all of my variegated threads, and I'm just trying to find a couple colors. I'm going to be using 2 on this piece. Now, when it comes to the stitching, I'm not going to show all of it. I mean, it would have been really, really long. Now, what I also did too, this is 6-strand floss. So for those of you that are not familiar with cross stitching, that's what this is used primarily for. You can separate it. So if you're working on an item that only requires 2 strands, you can pull 2 strands from this piece. I didn't choose to pull any strands. I kind of gauged the holes in the piece and thought I would be okay. When it comes to the pieces that I stitch first, the squares or the diamonds, however you want to talk about them or call them, I was fine. It's when I went up into the fans at the top where the hole actually broke. It's not noticeable, but I will pick it out for you. So I do not like to knot my thread. When I cross stitched, I never knotted my thread either. So I'm just kind of used to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up in the center, and now I'm literally just going to go back and forth between the center and the outer holes and just keep going up and down, up and down. I'm always coming up from the center and I'm going down on the side. And that's all I'm going to do when it comes to this piece. Now I will do what I refer to as traveling along the back of the piece so that, again, I do not put knots in my thread. I don't want that bulk sitting in the back. And I will show you a couple times what that looks like as you're walking, again, what I call walking around the back. And it's one of the reasons why I started in the center, because I can do that. I will be able to go from the center to one side, and then I'll be able to pick back up in the center and go to the other side. Now, I could have done that being closer to the edge, the second to the last, but I just started in the center, which is fine. You can see how the variegated thread works, that as I'm coming around this diamond or square, you can see how the colors are just graduated. They're light to dark, and then they'll go back. But you get those differences with each section that you stitch. But again, I'm always coming up through the center and I'm coming down the side. And that's what your image will look like. I go underneath some threads, I pull through, and then I'm going to go through a smaller amount, pull through, and then I'm going to come up in the next circle in the center, and I'm going to repeat all of those steps. I'm going to do the same thing now. Of course, make sure your thread doesn't come out of your needle, because of course you'll have to rethread. Just say. And I'm just going to continue to go around this image. Now again, for the sake of the video, we're going to now magically be ready to go to the other side. So I'm going to go under them. I'm not going to pull it all the way. I'm going to go through some more. Don't pull too hard. And then I'm going to pick up a couple more. And now I'm going to start over again. That's how you travel. That's how I traveled across the back, always locking the threads in with each other. Now I'm also going to do another step that will absolutely lock all of those stitches in on the back as well. And I do suggest it. You don't have to get carried away, but I do suggest just making sure that all of these are in place. Our last section here, as I'm locking my stitches in, as I'm walking around or coming across the back, is our half diamond. So now we're going to make a triangle. So again, you're just going to come up through that center, and you're going to go down around the edge. And again, you could have started at the top, started at the bottom. It doesn't matter. It's going to give you that same look in the piece. I don't know if you can see here, probably because I don't have this sped up as fast as what I usually speed my videos up to, but I don't know if you can see, and I should have stopped it, that you can actually see the cardstock is pushing when it comes to coming up with all 6 strands and the needle that I used and so forth. So keep that in mind as you're doing that. I would suggest using only 3 strands if you're using a 6 strand, or using maybe a Pearl 8, which are other threads that I have as well, which I'm going to try at some point. The next part that we're going to work on is the top section. Now you could leave it just like this. It's beautiful. It gives you some dimension. You've got those different colors. I'm going to come in next with a darker red variegated. Now this took me a little bit to actually figure out. Now I'm going to go into the one below it, and I'm going to lock my stitches. So I'm going to hold that tail. I'm going to come through, and I'm going to do that just one more time, and then we should be good. Now I'm coming up that bottom point. That is where you're always going to come up, if that's where you start. Now, what you want to do is don't do what I do here. I literally go directly to the left of that hole. That was the wrong thing to do. These are supposed to look like fans. Now, again, you can, but don't use all 6 strands. Don't use as thick of a needle, because that hole is going to rip very quickly. Now, I just realized that this is happening right about here. And I'm like, oh my. So I'm going to pull all of this out. So I use the needle to grasp the threads and to just reverse it, whether I'm doing that from the front or the back. Whichever one way is going to work better than the other. And I'll try to look at that on each side. And then choose which one will work the best. Once I have that figured out, I'm now back to where I was, where I just came up through the bottom of this fan. What you want to do is you want to go all the way over to the edge where the curve starts. And then start, again, always coming through the center and then going down along the edge. Your threads will then fall in line the same as you continue around your piece. This is where that bottom hole, where I'm constantly coming up, it does break. And it actually merges to the square to the bottom right of it. And that's fine, because it does it for every single one. So it's very uniform looking. But you can, the holes will break. Now, I also do recommend an extremely thick cardstock. I would go with a minimum, and you can see how that dropped down to that corner. And that's what I'm looking at right now. And that's okay. I'm going to travel through the square again, lock her in, and then make sure I do this same process. So, as I was saying, I would suggest a 110-pound cardstock or higher. I know there's 110, there's 120. I would use one of those. I do not, depending upon the thread and the needle that you use, this will tear. Now you can see I have all of those fans done, and now I'm just locking in my thread in the back. I'm going to snip it close to where I've ended. And you can see I have a mistaken stitch going on there, but you know what? I'm okay with it. It's totally, totally okay. Here I'm showing you how you can separate the threads to bring it down to 3, bring it down to 2. You can use 1, you know, whatever number thread you want. Here I pulled in my Aleene's tacky craft glue, and I'm just going over those squares, and I'm going to tap it with my finger. This is going to push it down into the threads. It's going to capture those thread ends that I have in there, because this is where I traveled. And then I'm just going to add a little bit more pressure just to get it down to soak into the threads. And that is how I will lock in everything. It doesn't come to the front, so you won't have stickiness there. But this will help to further lock in those threads. My paranoia is the recipient gets it and it just goes bleh and falls apart. I've cut a piece of gold mirror cardstock, and it is the Spellbinders mirror cardstock, out using that border, because you can see we do have areas where we didn't sew. So just so that color can come through those openings, I wanted the gold to come through. Now again, this is a border. You can keep it as a border. My idea is to actually make a pocket. I've been in a pocket mood lately, but let's continue to make a pocket. So I grabbed my double-sided foam tape, and I'm just going to place that on the edge and along the bottom. Now I don't want the pocket to be this deep with this one piece of double-sided foam tape being there. I want to raise that just a little bit. So I'm going to add a couple more layers, and then you'll see I'm going to remove a couple more layers. Just saying. And I'm also going to put some along the side towards the top of the border, so that it does create a pocket effect. So I'm just cutting down my double-sided foam tape, and now I'm just going to fill in that section so that it stays even. And now I'm going to remove the release paper. And this is right about here where I realize, well, I didn't make a pocket at all. It's just even. Yeah, right about here. That's why the fingers are tapping there. So I'm going to pull off a couple of those strips, and I'm going to take one of them and split it on each side of the top of the border. And then I'm going to place that last piece. And then we're going to place this on the base of our standard A2 side card base. We're just going to make sure that that's even along the bottom and on each of the sides. You can tell I really struggled with this, and this is the way that I should always just try to put my cards together. It's what works. Oh my goodness. I'm going to apply pressure so that it does give me a good adhesion. And I'm pulling out a stamp set that I actually showcased last year. And yes, I'm rummaging for that. And it's simply called Christmas Sentiments. And it's great because it's by the Joanne Fink line Zenspirations. I love Zentangles. I don't know if you guys know those. I love the doodle. And to me, that's what Zentangles are. They're nothing more but doodles. but they're dropped doodles and all of that awesomeness. There's also Zentangles where you can make blocks and all of that, so they're awesome. So of course I'm going to stamp this in my clear embossing ink, and I'm going to heat set it while everything's on the card. So you just want to make sure that your heat tool is good and hot. So I think I waited like a minute before I put this to my paper so that it would immediately start melting that powder. And you can see just how well it just was moving. I'm going to try to come in from the other side because my paper always warps and I'm good with it. I can just straighten it out. Again, it's a handmade card. We are not Hallmark. I know I've said that before, but there's all kinds of little things that can happen. So here I'm going to place my ornament right in the pocket, and when I put my note inside, the recipient will know. Grab the inside, or grab your ornament from the outside and enjoy it on your tree. So to further embellish this, I mean, the thread does it absolutely wonderfully on its own. I'm going to add some gems to the front like I did with the ornament. Now, the gems that I'm using, I don't know where I got them. I want to say somewhere on Amazon. I use these in bulks for other projects. These are craft gems. Well, they're actually for nail art. For another project that I make, I use these because I do use a lot of them. So I just have them mixed in a very large pot, and I'm pulling out the green ones to go along that red and to highlight the card background. So with the sentiment off to the left and I put my ornament in there, the front is absolutely wonderful and it's got some beautiful dimension. So as always, I hope you enjoyed this project. Again, today, day 4 or video 4, we are featuring the Spellbinders Large Die of the Month Club, and it is called Merry Stitching. All the products that I used will be listed down below, along with the link to their blog, their inspiration gallery, their shop, and so many more items that they have available will be listed down below. If you have any questions, make sure you leave those down below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Continue to enjoy your day. Continue to be safe and healthy. But by all means, remember what's most important for me. Always be creative. Take care, everyone.